least we've got video now.
Any idea where we dropped that?
We're talking about various influences.
Okay. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of good people who've come before us and are still making great growth. And I just try to pick up on different elements that work for me. No one's style completely works for what I try to accomplish. So just like everything else, I tend to take what I like and what's useful for me, and try to pay attention to other stuff. But if it doesn't work for what I'm trying to do, I just kind of leave that behind and make my own kind of cocktail of influences. And perhaps one day I will have my own style. But as of right now, everything I do, I think, is based off of other people, because that's how we learn.
Yeah,
It takes, I think, a very long time before we actually create our own style.
Well, I think it's always going to be based on
Sure.
other people, because I think
We will not-
most of the main wheels have been invented by now.
Sure.
Nobody's going to come up, I don't think, with a radically different goatee or something.
Yeah.
It's going to be very similar.
Mhm.
In the same way that the Akichi one spread
Yeah,
out
yeah.
into Kinoko and Hana
Mhm.
and Sada and whoever else there might be.
I think at this point, the details we're going to learn are going to be a lot more precise. Simple differences in tensions and placements and different ways to anchors. That's where I think things are going to go. Now that we have kind of the basis of it, it's all going to be the fine details that improve.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
gonna be
it's
really
like that
cool.
with any technology. First it's very blunt instrument, and then it sort of refines.
Indeed, I will take a lot of the influences that I'm getting influenced by the psychology, philosophy, and all the other disciplines, even gardening, and I bring into my bondage. And I know my seems weird, but for example, I talk about performances because I do mostly male performances, so I'm mainly on stage, and one of the main elements that I like is facial expression, and what best
Some people are getting no sound. Are those the old ones? No, okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
so what better what how better expressing and creating feelings in others if not through the facial expression. And we try to copy someone's facial expression and try to feel the feeling behind, and I think that happens when the public look at us and they are copying the emotions that we can express
Mm.
in the way they can understand.
Now, I was thinking more about talking about the influences of your actual style of road. I mean, you're sort of quite old style.
Yes, I took my inspiration from Arai Masato. He was my first teacher, let's say. Well, I've just seen his tutorial about hundreds of times. So he was my main inspiration.
Apparently, the volume.
Yeah, yeah.
sounds
Okay, well, let's
pretty-
move the mic. Should be. I don't know if we can boost it. I'll go and have a look and see if I can boost it. Carry on.
Well, Kinoko, Sada Steve, I've learned from Kinoko there is all the handling bit. I've learned from Yukimura the connection part, and I've learned from Akira Naka the beautiful way of suspending the body, so the beauty of the body in air, the aesthetic of the body, and of course from Ezinem I've learned to be myself and independent, and you've been my great teacher. You are my mentor. You've shown me the way that the route that I have to take on becoming independent and have my own style. So I do thank you very much for this.
Oh, thank you. Never mind, most of mine's borrowed, isn't it?
No.
Face it.
You can, because you can see.
But I think what you're saying also about how you bring like elements of in your garden into it. Like I think it's very important, to draw from what other people have discovered, the technique and the handling and exercises that other people have
Yes.
discover and then apply our own history to it. Things that have influenced before we got into rope. I try to tell people a lot. Don't try to copy me. Don't try to copy other people and what we do. Maybe learn ideas and concepts, but then take what were you doing before rope, bring those elements into it. And and there's really anything that involves body handling, or understanding your own body, martial arts,
Yes.
climbing, yoga, gymnastics, these things to help you manipulate the body. The rope is a tool. It's for binding. It's we should learn how to move the body and control the body, and not just focus on rope for rope's sake. And that's a big influence for me. I love rope, and it is always part of me. But at the same time, rope hasn't always been in my life, and the other things that have are the things that I pull from. Being
They're
in nature.
always yours
Yeah.
and it's always you.
I was raised, in nature on a pretty strict diet of horror movies and cartoons, and I try to bring those elements into, the moods that I try to create when I tie. That's a lot of where my personality comes from. So,
I suppose it's what is going to make you, what is going to differentiate you from all the others.
I think from my point of view, I mean, obviously I started quite sort of heavily rooted in the side of Steve's techniques, because that's most of what I learned. And I think I went through years of sort of endless repetition before I kind of figured out that actually what this was an exercise to learn the components. And as much as muscle memory and fluidity, because I think that fluidity and the way that you handle the rope, the way you apply the rope, are probably the most important things, more so than the tie itself. I mean, obviously the tie itself is relevant, but
The way you do the tie is way more
Yeah,
important than the tie itself.
yeah, I mean, like a 3-rope goatee isn't a magic spell to turn someone into a gooey mess, but you can just as easily do that with a single rope if you do it right.
well, it all depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're doing something that's very technical, like a transition sequence, of course, it's very important, the structure of your rope.
Of
But
course, yeah.
if you're just rolling around the ground with someone and playing with the rope, you don't need to spend half the time making sure all the frictions are perfect and everything's locked off and everything is super perfect, because you're
The
not
more-
using it for that.
Yeah.
You put the time into what you need. And if I'm not doing, this is one of the reasons why, and when I'm playing for fun and not doing a performance or something like that, I don't do a lot of suspension or transition work. I focus more on the body and the connection I'm having, the physical connection more than anything. People talk a lot about like connecting growth, and for me, that's being physically connected. Like that is the connection. I mean, there's more to it than just that, but that's how I get. That's how I kind of share the experience with someone, is by being intimate, being close, not like we share the same space. And then the rope is for binding and for creating feeling and manipulating the body. But my body does as much work as the rope does.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Maybe we can talk about muscle memory, because I know a lot of people, they want to read certain elements into the muscle memory, but if we are not careful, those elements, we learn them wrong. So we put in our muscle memory a movement or something that is actually not right. I think there is the danger of the wrong practice
which is-
versus the right practice, and how difficult it is to remove wrong habits.
Well, this is why, I'm very much in favour of teaching handling and movement techniques before teaching the ties,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
because otherwise all people do is ingrain bad habits while they're practicing the tie.
Exactly.
If they're not moving the rope and using the rope efficiently, using their, using finger and thumb instead of your whole hand, little things like pulling rope through rather than trying to push it through.
One of the common mistakes.
People use too many fingers when they start, and I think that doing simple exercises less fingers is far more effective than doing tremendously complex ties. Because I think a lot of my handling technique, obviously a hell of a lot of it was from Steve, but an awful lot of it was just from the many years I'd tied, and your hands just find easier ways of doing things when you do things, thousands of times. They start to do shortcuts, and I've been many a time, and I've actually looked down at what I'm doing and gone like, oh, I don't remember doing it that way before. When did I start doing that? It's just happened,
Yes.
It's weird.
When the hands go.
Yeah. So
it's like when you're asking in which gear you are first.
Yeah.
With the cast.
Yeah. The thing where you just ask people, close your eyes, fast as you can. Where's reverse gear in your car? And they'll do the hand movement. They won't sort of start thinking about it because they probably can't even think where it is. In the front of their mind, and it's like that with so many things. You ask someone to describe how they tie their shoelaces or something.
They don't know to explain it simply because they do the movement in.
They do it's so automatic.
That's a funny thing actually, because I've actually started a lot of classes by asking people to tie their shoes, and a lot of times
most of us do it wrong, don't we?
Yeah. So whenever I talk to people, they're like, oh, I don't need a single contact class, or I don't need no fundamentals. I'm past that. I'm like, okay, well, show me how you tie your shoes. And I found that a lot of people actually can tie one way and can't tell you even the way that they're tying.
They don't make the difference between the different variations.
And I mean, that was a big eye opener for me. There was one day, once the kind of the rope bug really set in, to where I was kind of thinking about it even when I wasn't doing rope. One day I was walking around and it popped in my head. I was like, oh, I've been tying my shoes wrong all these years. And then all of a sudden, single contact just made so much more sense to me. Before that, there's, a lot of people, they'll do a single contact, they'll learn that. They won't understand the why the single contact works, and it'll collapse half the time on them, or almost all the time. And then
I think they don't even understand why the single contact is actually so important.
And then they move past that. And what happens so often is people are, tying goatees with a bad single contact, and you're building a house on a bad foundation.
Yeah.
And I think honestly that more every level of rigor should pay more attention to single column ties and actually use it as a tool to practice. I know that in my downtime when I'm watching a movie, I'll sit there and tie single column ties. I know a handful of them, and I'll tie them all over, under, over, left-handed, right-handed, and I'll do it through a movie or whatever. And that's one of my main ways of practicing when I'm by myself, because I want to know that no matter what situation I'm in, I can tie a single column tie, and I know that it's going to be quick. It's going to be what I'm trying to accomplish at the time I'm trying to accomplish, no matter what the circumstance is, and I don't have to second guess it.
It's going to be muscle memory.
Yes, and it's going to be not just one muscle memory, because that's what a lot of people do, is they learn to do something one way, and they encounter a situation where it's not that way, and then they can't do it.
They don't understand actually what's happening in there. I think one of the beginners, it's not that fault, it's something common. I went through that when I was not able to look certain details because I was not seeing the details, even if it was there in front of me. So the single column tie, we can do a granny, we can do a the reef knot, and lots of the people they don't. Yes, reef and granny. So a lot of the people they don't even see the difference between one and the other one because they haven't developed that attention.
Yeah.
That it's something that comes with time, so it's not something that we have.
And nobody should worry. I didn't know the difference for years. So there's an interesting question there. If you want to go to that, Michael was asking, are there any finger picking drills or techniques you recommend to pick up speed and efficiency? That's an interesting one.
I do have to.
Okay. Well, I mean
I think using counter tension, just going like around a post and wrapping around and doing counter tension and using a single finger to hook and pull through, or two fingers to pinch and pull, is a good way to kind of work on that, and it'll help either rope handling, keeping awareness of where your ends are, so that they don't trip you or the person that you're tying on.
Yeah. I have. I don't know.
That's hopefully we'll see in a minute.
Yeah.
See if that's yeah, because you don't get instant feed here. So oh yes, we have. Yes, oh, we've got it on the other machine. That's good.
I know we said this during the first run of this, but if no one got this, we're actually on a delay, so the questions and everything are going to be a few seconds off.
Actually, I just realised the logged in over there. It's fine.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, we should actually have logged in on this one with my
So
login.
finger techniques. I have tied the goatee here on the chair. And as a finger technique, we can use 2 fingers, 1 finger. So with 1 finger, the rope will go behind the finger and out. And instead, we can use 2 fingers, where the rope will go between the finger and then out. And again, 2 fingers technique. The rope goes behind the finger and out.
And always taking the rope to your finger,
Yes, to my finger.
as you always say in classes.
Yes, I know. So these are mainly the 2 main techniques that I'm using.
Yeah.
With 1 finger.
Yeah, it's basically the same. That's one I like to do as a fast technique. Move there, through, and just taking the finger round and round, using as few fingers as you can. Now, normally, you only need to really use 1 finger, possibly 2 fingers, finger and thumb, for most of what you do.
Well, if you take a finger to the rope as opposed to taking the rope to the finger.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no.
No,
You
it
need to
depends
bring.
on where you're talking.
You
Well,
need.
if you're like going behind something.
If you're going behind, you take the rope to your finger
You always take
because
the
you've got limited movement with your finger.
The finger is short, while the rope can go to the finger. I see so many people going with the fingers under the ropes and then looking
Yes,
with the
yes.
fingers for the rope that is
Or-
there, destroying in the process all the tension they have creating simply because they need to reach with that finger the rope. Why actually the rope should come to that finger.
Yes.
So this is one of the common mistakes.
And the other thing is pushing a finger through rather than trying to put your whole fist through. I see so many people trying to get their whole hand through, and as with many things in life, it's far easier to get a single finger into a small space than your entire fist. So it's a question of minimizing your movements. Yeah, I thought you were sniggering about that. You're there, we
I
know.
was watching the delay and watching Nina doing this.
Right, we proposed ourselves last night to actually talk about the expression on the back.
Yep.
Should we do that, guys?
Yeah, sure. No, we can talk about that one. What we mean when we're talking about the X friction, we're not talking about the one on the first wrap of the Akichi or Asada, Kineko, Goatee. We're talking about the update that Kineko has added, or Ichino Akai, his study group, has added to the Goatee to increase the stability of it and also to get better weight distribution.
I think it's good, like, just be careful while calling it a friction because it's more of a shield because it's not actually compacting anything. It's holding the goatee from separating as opposed to frictioning it together. So it's not so much pushing in, but keeping the ropes from separating out.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I call it X friction because it's so similar to the one on the top wrap.
So we have.
By the way, but before we go into this, the reason this came up is because there's been a sort of fashion because of this to suspend from the stem. Now, if you try and do that with a standard goatee, you're kind of asking for trouble because
And there are exceptions depending on the goatee they're using, but say we're doing.
we're talking about the
Yeah.
Akichi derived
Sure.
versions. So on here,
Nothing
oh,
else.
there you are. By the way, you've got a reef up there.
Nothing else.
It's two hitches rather. Ignore that one. That was just done to tie the rope on there rather than a wrist tie. But this is to illustrate the point of that we're talking about. If you were to suspend from here without the reinforcements, essentially you'd be suspending from this line,
But we can actually
the
show
main
you.
stem.
We can actually do that.
And if you pull on that, firstly, it's going to come out in a V shape here. And it's going to pull the wrists upwards and put quite a lot of load on there. If, of course, that were to come loose, your suspension line is attached to precisely nothing, because what is likely to happen is the rope will actually pull through this bottom friction, the half moon bit friction,
But without that, right?
and out between the two wraps. So one of the purposes of this is to ensure that that doesn't happen. It gives you a nice solid mounting for your Shibari.
So the X friction that we were talking about, it is actually this one has the shape of an X and it's secured here in the middle. And
Basically got a break around the middle,
exactly.
one turn.
I do want to show you how it's done. And we might even add another probe to the suspension to recreate actually the Chris was talking about.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Show people what we're talking
So
about.
sorry. There you go. So this is we start from, we build our goatee, we have our two wraps, and we start with our first friction of the goatee and second friction of the goatee. So I'm just going to block this now for a second and show you actually the difference, show you actually what would happen. Do you mind?
To throw the rope.
Show us what from there. So if I will try to suspend, so let's say I'm doing the suspension and I will try to add my suspension line in the middle of those frictions, that's not matter one surprise. Like they do in the old style. That's not matter the style, the last side, well met. And then when you pull with tension, you add the suspension, you can see the effect that it's having. The two friction, they break apart. Let's see what's happening if actually we remove.
Well, let's just demonstrate what would happen as the model's wrists come up, because this is rigid and it doesn't move.
Exactly.
So let's just untie that, and I'll control it slightly and allow it to come up an inch or two, or a few centimeters, whatever you're working. Okay, so now let's
So let's put it back in position. This is how it should be.
wrap it round the wrist.
Okay. So if I'm going to tie the line around the stem, and then suspend from here, what will happen? This line actually will be pulled out. Let's see the suspension.
You're obviously not putting as much as
Can you?
you've got. Your frictions are good. It's obviously nothing like a real suspension.
Well, it's not. But we can see all of it.
You can see all this forming right here.
Yes. And we can see all of it, that this line, that it's actually the line. Leave it. No. It is the line that this line. This is one single line that goes up. There you go. And this is the effect you will have in the suspension. I don't know how well you can see with the camera, but I hope people will understand the concept. Another way of so another way we talk about variations. We say this is not something good. This is not something that we want to happen. If you don't want that, you can create the X shield that he was talking about, X friction on top of the friction to actually get them together and avoid that separation. Or another method would be by suspending, like you do with the chest harnesses, taking just the wraps, but just the upper wraps. So the reason why we want to do this is another technique. Still without that X friction reinforcement is going to happen pretty much the same thing. It's going to be problematic anyhow.
Yeah, with this specific TK, I wouldn't load either the updraft or the stem without reinforcement.
So it's how you can see it's not something that actually is. This is the line. This one comes in down.
I mean, it is held to a certain extent by the line going across this way, but it depends on how you're applying the load as well. If you're applying the load towards that, I would imagine it would be less stable.
In the past, I've had a TK that I tied like this, and I did the reinforcement. I tied to the stem, and
I don't know if they can sort of see you up there.
and the entire back of it just opened up. That was during my first performance, and I'll never make that mistake again. I got really lucky, but it is something that will happen. So depending on what TK they're using, this one specifically, you want to reinforce it. If you have 2 layers and you have nothing protecting them, and you load the stem or the top wrap, it will open up because we're just pulling on a little bit. You put a body on that. Yeah. And especially if you're doing any kind of dynamic transitions or anything like that, it's a recipe for the stem to open up and the potato to collapse.
Yeah. Indeed, one of the examples that I like to give is like the construction. When you have a building with 2 floors, when the first floor is not connected with the second one, and you have an earthquake, and they're just moving instead of actually getting together and being solid as one piece. Of engineering.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen one pull out pretty much that far away.
I've done that.
I can show you a picture.
But I didn't want to say where I'd seen it. It was a long time ago.
Very long time.
When you very first started.
That was the way that I've actually learned, and the way that we've discovered that thing. It was because I was a lot practicing in the old style, and what I've tried to do, I've tried to apply the old style to the new style. So this way of attaching to the stem is very much old style, when they just wrap around the stem, while the new style was supposed to suspend from the wraps. Now, when I was studying both styles, the old and the new one, I've done a bit of mix match, and I realized that actually they are not compatible. And yes, I've done that mistake. Luckily, you were here and you've told me right away, so the situation per se was not dangerous, simply because he stopped. It was a good way, learning from our mistakes, and that was certainly opened my eyes. I've learned something, and I will, of course, not repeat. I will not repeat the problem and mistake.
No, well, I mean, this is the thing is that unless we understand how things work, and understand the engineering, if we move outside set recipes, you are going to be going into unknown territory and possibly getting these sort of incompatibilities, which I think is one reason why an understanding of the components is the most important thing.
And how the components work together.
What they do. Because once you understand that, 2 things happen. One, you can spot your own mistakes. You can say, well, okay, that might look like a friction, but it's not holding, it's not doing its job. So it's got no right to be called a friction. So that's clearly wrong. The other thing it allows you to do is have this sort of Lego Meccano type approach to tying, which is what I really like, is you take a variety of things do the job, and you create other things with them, and you can work on the fly then.
And you can also apply it to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
You're like,
rather than thinking, solid. Right, well, I'll do this tie, then that tie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I kind of start with this one and then meander off and see where it takes me.
You know, when we talk about the components for the real, you know, when we are talking about the components, the main component that we are using in the Japanese rope bondage is the single column tie, the variation of the single column tie, that is the double column tie, and we use friction mostly. So these are three components that we are mainly use. So if we consider our single column tie as the brick with we build entire homes, so entire ties, and the frictions are not else than the mortar or the cement that puts together the component to another component. So let's take the example of a goatee. The goatee is not ours, there's a single column tie on the piece attached to another single column tie and attached to another one.
Yeah.
And all that attachment is done by the friction, or is done with that cement mortar that we're talking about. So
Pretty much.
I believe that, you know, if people will really put their attention on the component single column tie and will try to learn it instead of jumping, because a lot of them they believe it's boring.
Yeah.
You know, if they focus their attention on the single column tie, they already learn and how to use it in different ties. They've learned 50% of the bondage from my point of view.
I think you're probably right. Yeah. But it certainly seems to be working the way you're teaching.
So, and it gives me way more freedom to create ties and freedom to achieve my purpose, because I guess how to decide purpose is like being coherent with the purposes I'm
If anybody's got any questions, feel free to pitch in and we'll do our best to answer them. At least you'll get several opinions. I don't know whether you'll get an answer or not. You'll get several opinions. Actually begs the question whether there are any answers anyways, really. There you go.
Well,
I think they're opinion.
well, I mean, I think there's not one right answer for anything. There's a lot of ways to do things. There's a lot of wrong ways to do things, but there's a lot of ways that work, and there's a lot of ways that we can apply to different areas of growth and personality and anything really. I mean, the idea is that I think that once you get out of the idea of like this is how, so like one of the things that gets to me is when I ask somebody, why are you doing that? They go, well, that's so and so should. Well, yeah, but why are you doing that? Like that doesn't, like if I ask them why they do that, they'll tell me why they do that.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you, why do you do that? And so if you don't know why you're doing something, that you should really focus on that. And I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong, but you should understand why what you're doing works and what you want, you know. So you know, there's a lot of stuff. I have a lot of friends who have very different styles that I do. They want to achieve different things than I do. But I love going to their classes. I love hanging out with them because you learn little things. You know, even though that we may at the end of it maybe accomplishing two different things, we're using different elements of each other's ideas, and sometimes people have a different way of looking at things that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always good to kind of keep your mind open, and you know, it's not a bad idea to understand a style of growth that someone's created inside and out. But I think by closing the doors to other styles, you can be limiting yourself.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's only one approach. Like political parties or something. You're listening to one party line.
Well, everyone, you know, we get inspired by so many, you know, I like so many things from so many people, therefore I'm getting inspired from all those people. And how he said, we get it personal, we make it personal, and we make it our own. We give our own perception of feeling.
Yeah. Varying degrees, I guess.
I mean, I think it's important that all of us ask ourselves, why do we do this?
Yeah.
You know, like, I think it's really important. Like, you know, some people, you know, I mean, I don't want to speak for me. What I want to achieve is I want to hurt people. I want to make people come. I want to make people feel ashamed and feel beautiful. And these are things that I want to do. I want to push these boundaries of you know, beauty and suffering, and kind of tickle that twisted part of my brain that I need something to do that with.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that like I feel like it's not in vain, and I'm not hurting anybody. Maybe hurting someone, but not
harming anyone.
Yes, thank you. But at the end of the day, there's something accomplished. There's some kind of positive at the end of it, even if there is suffering involved.
I'm doing bondage, but the purpose I'm doing bondage is not to make them calm, but simply to make art. So I can't stress enough that, lots of the girls, they come to me and they want the experience of the life, and unfortunately I cannot give them that, simply because I'm not focused on them. I'm focused on the art that I'm creating, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that I cannot make them happy, but it's simply the reason why I do them, which is completely different from his reason. And we're not talking about wrong and right. We're simply talking about what we mostly like and want to develop, and that's it.
We've got another question here
That's very
from Michael. What's your opinion on how to economically learn tying? A private lesson's cheaper than a whole weekend intensive. The money I'd spend on going to ShibariCon or some other large event could pay for a lot of lessons. Well, obviously, you're asking someone who's biased, because part of our living is made from teaching. I guess it depends on what you want to learn, and what depth you want to learn that in. Yes, you could probably save yourself a lot of money on going to ShibariCon or another large event by looking on YouTube and looking at anything that people have posted up for free on the internet.
Indeed, it's a lot has to do with your capacity of seeing things and stealing things from others. But often in the beginning, you cannot see the things that you want to steal from others, simply because you do not have all the background, or you don't have the base that lets you understand what is important and what is not.
Yeah,
So
I think
in
that's
beginning,
certainly
private classes are like almost they're personalized.
It was certainly
and they go to them to correct your own mistake, not the mistakes of another.
I think there's also, there are a lot of free resources like peer rope groups and this sort of thing. But again, I mean, the thing is knowing what the quality is of the teaching that you're getting. It might be someone extremely experienced. It might be someone who doesn't know their arse from their elbow. I've seen both. And seen some quite dangerous things taught. And also, it depends on what you're learning. Learning a karate or something like that, yeah, fine. You could quite safely learn that off YouTube, or even off someone who doesn't particularly know what they're doing, because it's unlikely to hurt somebody. On the other hand, if you, to use my expression, if you build a goatee, it's GK, whatever, fox tie, whatever you like to call it, and you suspend somebody off it, it's not only got to look like a bird, it's got to fly like a bird. Now, what I mean by that is, if you know, let's say, nothing about aeronautical engineering, and you make something that just looks like an aeroplane, the chances of it flying are pretty slim. And, you can hurt someone quite badly by suspending them in a badly made goatee positioned in the wrong place. It also depends really, I suppose, on what level of expertise you want to acquire.
And
the higher the level.
And why you are doing bondage for? You are doing bondage for performances, or you're doing bondage for yourself? Because then what you need to learn is there are two completely different sets of instruction, can I say? Different techniques, different moods, and simply the purpose changes everything.
I think there's pros and cons to kind of all of them. Like if you go to something like ShibariCon or Bed, I think it can be a great experience, and I think that
it's a social experience as well.
Yeah, and you can pick up little things from a lot of people. The downside, though, is if you don't have your fundamentals and your basics, and you go to something like that, then you're going to end up missing stuff, and you're going to have less time. You think about going to a school where you have 60 to 100 students in a class, as opposed to having a private tutor.
Yeah.
You specifically can work on what you need to work on. So yes, our private's going to be more expensive. You're going to get that one-on-one time that's going to exactly be what you need to learn. And I think, and workshops are kind of in the middle. You get a little bit more personal. You can go over specific things. You have a longer time to go over it. They're a little bit cheaper than privates, but they're a little more expensive than going to a big con. And then with videos, tutorials and stuff like that, I think are great reference points. But other than a couple things, when you get into focusing a lot on learning strictly through tutorials, you're not feeling other people's tensions. You're not being critiqued by people who have experience. So you're just kind of following. And you can learn stuff, but speaking from experience, I learned a lot from tutorials at first. And then I realized that I didn't know what I was doing. I got shut down, and I had to kind of talk about this earlier. I had to relearn muscle memory, relearn technique, and it was very challenging, but it was necessary. So I think that it's really good to, and if you're in somewhere like London or Paris where there's a big group where there's people that you can learn from, and that's great too. But if you're in a small town or if there's not a lot of people there, the best thing to do is go to a beginner workshop, go somewhere where there's experienced people you can get private tuition from, and then kind of mix and match everything and take from that. But I wouldn't try to cut corners. There's nothing like firsthand experience. There's nothing like being critiqued and understanding where you're making mistakes by people who have experience.
Yeah.
Got here.
Well, I mean, I spent a shed load going out to Japan, getting lessons from Steve and so on. But I mean, that was certainly invaluable. And one of the things we're trying to do with Shibari classes is put high quality tutorials online. And not just video, but links, other people's approaches to doing the same thing, notes, general sort of added content over and above what you get on your typical YouTube video. And we're shooting them, I think, very professionally. High res, multi-camera, properly edited, and so on. So that's an option. I wouldn't say it's an alternative to live tuition. I think live tuition's always got to be had for things like you say, tensions and so on. On the other hand, I think you learn a lot of stuff from the videos we're doing that are quite advanced. Well, not advanced as in so much as you need a high skill level, but things you only find out when you become advanced. Things you only find out when you've been to a few workshops.
When you have developed that attention.
Well, yeah, but you attain that by doing things like getting tuition from, the Japanese guys when they come over and spending 5 days, sitting in a workshop with them. But on the other hand, a certain amount of that is stuff that could be practiced outside the workshop. So it's it's a balance. It's a balance.
So Dan, you're asking about tying to the stem or the wraps themselves. Depending on the goatee, you can tie on the wraps. You can tie on the wraps on this if you want, but you're going to put more tension on the lower wrap, which is going to constrict the breathing more in a vertical position.
Indeed, this is what's happening. For example, if you tie around the wraps, simply around the wraps, and you want to suspend, if the tension on the main line would be like this, you see how unbalanced everything is and how the main tension actually goes on the lower wraps instead of the upper one, that it's where the tension should go, where the stronger part of the body is.
And you've got less to worry about from the point of view of nerves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in a face down, this changes a little bit, but
Of course, face down would be like that.
But when you're in an upright vertical, if you're hanging just off the TK, it's going to put a lot of constriction on the lower wrap of the TK, as opposed to the stem will distribute a little bit more.
Yes, exactly. If the stem, of course, is solid and structural, as we said.
We're actually crawling off the top of the screen here. So tilt it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That was did that answer that question? I mean,
Did we answer to the question?
The delay is hard because they have to wait just a couple seconds for us to catch up with them. What is?
Yeah, we should really have the other one.
Well, I think that this is
How do you
their
gauge
time.
the experience
This is
of the
their
teacher?
time, and this is our time.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
it wouldn't matter anyway.
How do you gauge the experience of a teacher? I guess part of it's their CV, their bio.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard question, but I think it just comes
Ask
down
students.
to kind of students and reputation. It's kind of hard because you get a lot of different biases out there, and I've met teachers that I wasn't a fan of that a lot of people loved, and they're teachers that I love that other people don't like. So it becomes you just kind of got to try different people out, and kind of you have to learn for yourself what to look for. I think the basics and the fundamentals. Once you get those, you can kind of gauge different people's opinions, and it's different. But I'd say that the only way you can really gauge that is by bio and reputation. Unfortunately, that's what we have to base things
I
off.
suppose also looking at their work, ideally video.
Yeah, I mean
with
that's
as few edits as possible.
that's the way. But still, at the same time, videos and photos only do so much.
And-
Yeah,
and
but
not
you can
necessarily
see how somebody ties.
Yeah,
you
but
can
not-
see how they handle rope.
Yes, but
But
let me tell you, not necessarily somebody that knows what they are doing, that knows how to explain what they are doing.
that's
So
true.
there is a big difference in between
and vice
being
versa.
exactly
Yeah.
in between actually being able to teach. You might be a
But
great
if they
performer,
can't
but
tie,
you
they
can't.
won't, it's
you
unlikely
can't
they'll be able to
explain.
teach you to tie. They might be a great teacher, but if they can't tie,
Well,
in the
yes,
first
if they
instance.
but performing and tying is two different things.
no, I'm not talking about
Exactly.
performing, but even just if you see them tying, not in a an informal
Sure,
situation, and they're fumbling the rope like they've got 5 thumbs,
Mhm.
the chances of them being able to teach you much is probably fairly remote. But if someone's fairly slick with the rope, and they're handling it nicely, it's not getting tangled around their feet, and the work looks neat.
Mhm.
You've got something there.
Do you want to move on to that
Yes.
question, or do you want to?
We can all do it. Yeah, go on.
So the next question is different styles of goatees, but
Your
it's-
goatee
it's
looks like a
same-
goatee.
Yeah. So yes, if you're going for a look, that's one thing, but there's different functionalities for different styles. It depends on if you're doing more dynamic transition work, or if you're doing more static work, or if you're trying to side load stuff, or
Or even floor.
yeah, and
I mean,
floor
like,
work.
for example, Yukimura does goatees that
Yeah.
I wouldn't think of
Yeah.
hanging someone up in, because nor would he. They're not designed for it.
Yeah.
They're a restraint type of the floor.
Exactly. So no, I don't think all goatees are created equally. I think that it depends on the circumstance and what you want to use it for, and also what you want to get across. The TK that I use is not the greatest for dynamic transitions, but I don't personally do a lot of dynamic transitions, so I'm okay with that. I much more prefer to focus on the flow of my rope and what feels good for me, and so and it works for what I do. But if I was to take the goatee that I use and try to do a bunch of transitions, it would probably fall apart. But I know that, and so if I am gonna do dynamic transitions, I would alter the goatee or the TK to that situation. And the only way to really learn that, would be to learn different styles. Learn Kanoko's TK and Sami's TK and Naka's TK, and not just learn how to tie them, but learn why they're tied like that
And why they're different.
Yes,
Why the
absolutely.
difference is.
Absolutely.
From what I'm seeing in one of the difference that I can give between old and new style in the construction of the goatee is maybe how the wraps, the way that the wraps are constructed. So in the new style, the wraps of the goatee, they will be horizontal. The wraps will go parallel to each other, while in the old style, the upper wrap, the way you construct the goatee on the back, you do not have two wraps like that attached by friction. So if I can make a draw
It's usually a single friction.
It's
isn't it?
actually
Pulled
usually
together.
exactly a single friction pulled together. So you do not have the difference between the first and the second rub. You have one big friction that treats everything like. Can I just draw it because I know it's very easy.
Well, fine. Maybe have you got your Bible there and just show an illustration?
So what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Can you please take off? So what I'm talking about, usually we start from the wrist and we build our rubs, and this will be our two friction. Of course, these two friction, they will be big together, attached together. While in the old style, we start from the wrist and we have a bit of this configuration with a big friction in the middle. So I don't know if people can see. This is, in my opinion, structurally in between
That's
all.
better.
Exactly. The difference between, so one is that one there, it's old style, and that one there is new style. So I see the difference in how the wraps are built, and has to do a lot, in my opinion, with that triangle, because this the way that triangle, you know, we're talking about that triangle, will
American
have an
death
impact on
triangle.
how the tension will be released in the thigh. So here, when that triangle gets into,
Yeah.
I will want to
I mean,
explain.
in I suppose in sort of simple terms, what we mean when we talk about old and new style, which is probably a primary division in the construction. The new style is started with Akichi, and
It's much more engineered.
Yes.
yes, that's the one with the parallel. Things are very much more isolated. Each component is locked off and isolated. This is what Steve always drummed into me when he was teaching it, or his version thereof.
While the old style.
Kineko's goatee is based on it. So is Kano's.
Yes.
In fact, I think they came from Akichi to Kana to Kineko and Asada. So that's probably the more correct way of expressing it. And Kazami's is kind of interesting because it's got quite a few similarities to
It's
that.
a mixture between, I see Kazami Ranki, a mixture between the old style and the new style.
Yeah.
You know, such a keeping some elements from there, but actually, yes, innovating. I do like Kazami
Yeah,
Ranki because
yeah.
of that, I think.
And then there's the whole raft of people who are tying the this type of goatees where you have the central knot. I mean, this is obviously not exhaustive
And
because
indeed,
they're
the components are not tied together. Are not tied.
not isolated.
Not isolated.
Yeah, they're not locked off and isolated.
Exactly.
You know, with the Asada, Akichi, blah blah Kineko, blah 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 blah. It's create one component,
Attached
lock it
to
off
yes.
with friction, create
It's
another
isolated,
component,
yes.
lock it off with a brake,
Yes.
and everything is locked off in that way. Whereas very
Or it's
often
like-
there won't be any real lock off between wraps
Till the end.
until the end. No,
Exactly.
in the old style ones.
Exactly.
So I guess that's kind of the answer to that one.
I hope we have explained.
Yeah, when I first started tying, I would tie something that looked like a TK or a goatee, and then when I finally learned how to tie one, I realized that why mine wasn't working. And this is kind of the downside to being mostly self-taught, is that I was following more the looks than the understanding, and that's why I preach a lot. Understanding is more important than the looks. It's kind of not completely accurate, but understanding is very important. If it just looks that way and you understand it, well, it's most likely not going to work. And so, there's a lot of people out there. There's always the debate of, tired of seeing goatees or TKs, and people are sick of them and do something new. Well, the truth is the subtle details in it are what make it work and make it fail. It's not how it looks, and it's how it functions, and it
Absolutely.
takes a bunch of elements for that. You know,
And it gets a lot of bad press for that reason.
Absolutely.
It gets how many times do you hear, oh, goatee is dangerous, it causes nerve damage.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like motorcycles,
Yeah.
I mean, motorcycles aren't inherently dangerous in themselves, you can leave it sitting in the garage and it's not going to hurt anybody. It's only when you get the idiot on it, or it meets another idiot out there,
or simply
that does
someone who
something
just doesn't
stupid.
understand it.
Yes, if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, if people are tying things that just look like, a plane, but don't fly like one.
I think I would like to add something very important. We were talking about the single column tie and tension, and we said, if you learn the single column tie, you learn 50% of bondage, and that's something that I think, learning that the single column tie is adapted, the tension of the single column tie has to be adapted to the body. So, for example, if I'm tying a single column tie around the wrist, the tension in that single column tie will be different if I'm tying a single column tie around my thigh or even around the upper part of the body. So the tension in the single column tie will very much depend on the part of the body you are tying. So understanding that single column ties, the tension that you tie the single column tie depends on the body, that's already giving like a huge help, because we have a reference point to adapt to. So we adapt our single column tie to the capacity of the body. So to the capacity to actually, it's not capacity, the right word, but
To the relevant part.
It's the relevant
tension to the relevant part.
Exactly. Some different parts are stronger than others. The legs are stronger than the arms. Therefore, there will be a different tension involved there. We tie with a different tension a footomomo or the leg than we would do the wrist, for example.
I think understanding where we come from is, and then applying that to make your own work is great. Actually,
we're all kind of adherents of the kitted parts school, aren't we? Really,
Yeah,
rather than any particular style. But it's, as we said earlier, it's a question of knowing how those parts work.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, it's like electrics or something.
Yeah.
If you plug your cooker into the light socket, something's going to go wrong.
Because that's not having enough.
Because you need to understand that it's not just a question of going like, cooker uses electricity. Electricity comes out there. Put the two together.
Different
it's the
tension
same
on the
with
line.
bondage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different tension on the line.
When I develop my own ties, there's usually more than one influence in it.
Yeah.
The only time that I tie with specifically one influence is if I'm copying someone's tie. Like if I'm tying someone else's tie, well then, and even then, like I tie, Naka's TK majority of the time.
Yeah.
I still don't tie it exactly like he ties it though.
No.
Like I tie it slight alterations because we don't tie the same. Like the energies that we put into our rope are different. What we try to accomplish is different. There's elements that I've taken from that, but it wouldn't work for me to use everything that he does to tie the way that I tie. So even when I'm tying his TK, I still tie it slightly different to adhere to what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
He's using the word aesthetic, and I think aesthetic. It's a very interesting word because Japanese rope bondage wants to be aesthetic and works on aesthetics. And how do we achieve the aesthetic of the Japanese rope bondage? What gives the aesthetic of that? Or comes just from that, or aesthetic is something way bigger?
Well, I mean, there's aesthetic in many respects. There's the aesthetic in terms of how your rope makes the model look. Does she look elegant or does she look like a sack of potatoes? And I mean, that's certainly one of the mistakes I think that a lot of people seem to make when they start out with suspensions. They're sort of so bound up with the idea of getting someone in the air, they kind of forget what it's supposed to look like when it's up there, and it's just like, oh yeah, let's quick anything in the air.
That's it.
But so many of the
aspects of Japanese bondage are makeup. You know, they're improving the model. You know, they're pulling her onto tiptoes, elongating the legs in exactly the same way as a pair of high heels would.
Exactly.
Your Mirai Masato video, he was very carefully lifting the top wrap, pulling the skin up, dropping the wrap.
That's part of
And
the
it was just
aesthetic.
giving a nice little lift to the boobs, making them look good. You know, it's like the choice whether you run the rope over or under when you're doing the front bracing on a Kichi style goatee, depending on the size of the tits generally.
If you have big tits, you can go under because
Yeah.
you have support. If you have small, you don't. Or
Yeah, because the idea with the smaller ones is you're generally trying to compress and make more of them, whereas the bigger ones you're trying to
pull them up.
lift them, do a Hello Boys type Wonder Bra effect.
I think aesthetics are a little bit different for everybody. You know, again, it goes to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
You know, there's times where when I'm tying, I want to make someone feel shame. I want someone to feel, take their beauty away.
Oh,
from
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
and there's times I want to make someone feel empowered, and I want to make them feel even more beautiful. You know, so it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. And then, the aesthetic that I like is very organic and very rough. You know, I was raised on slasher movies. And I like the idea of dragging someone into the woods and like quickly binding someone and it being very organic and rough, as opposed to a bunch of smooth, clean lines that look very like.
Indeed, I believe the
I'm with you on
aesthetic.
that.
I believe indeed the aesthetic doesn't come from how precise the rubs are, but it comes from the how natural were you doing, how natural looks what you've been doing, how natural everything came. You know, we like things if somehow. That have to do with the natural. If we feel it out of context, that thing will not look nice. We'll just feel it as out of context.
I think one of your
somehow.
favourite words kind of sums it up in a way: efficiency.
Yeah.
You kind of want the rope to look efficient.
Yes.
I mean, it depends on whether you're looking for that clean look or.
Like a lot of Western bondage is very clean. You know, which is not my style, but
Yeah.
it's the aesthetic they want to
Yeah.
achieve. You know,
Yeah, but
I mean,
if you talk about
a lot of Canada's work is very clean. I mean, it's
True,
really sharp,
very true, very true.
and I do like that in rope. And who's the other guy? Monko. He does some very slick stuff as well.
But all I'm saying, how important it is in the aesthetic. So if somebody's looking at us, if we don't know to use that rope, so if we fumble around, that scene will not be pleasing aesthetically. So aesthetic, in my opinion, is not just something that we put on the body, but it's part of a bigger scene where you are part of that aesthetic. You are part of that scene. That with the way you use your rope, the way you use your own body, will be coherent and will have a huge importance in describing the aesthetic or in achieving aesthetic.
Tension. That's another
well, a
one.
lot of people learn to tie.
Slack ropes. That looks crap.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? I mean,
Depends
that's the kind of a
depends
general
on the
rope.
context.
Well,
Slack
most of the
rope.
time,
Yeah,
if you've got
I
a tie
agree,
and
I
you've got
agree.
like bits hanging down on it,
Again,
unless
depends
you're
on the
looking for that
context.
ravaged look.
Yeah,
you
depending on the
know.
context. Most of the time, yes, but occasionally I kind of like that. But I think also people tend to learn a tie and think that they can put that tie on everybody.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that if you don't read the body, and you're talking about suspending someone and just kind of keeping someone in the air, if you don't know how to pull someone's body and move it to get into the position you want, you're going to create a very awkward aesthetic. So again, it's not just about the rope; it's the way you apply it, the rope to the body.
Yeah,
it's the way
stepping
you
back
move
and
the
looking
body.
at it. I mean, that's a mistake
Absolutely.
I've made a lot of.
And understanding how the body works. I think something I've been talking about a lot lately is putting someone in the goatee position and just grabbing their arms, and you see a lot of people pull their elbow out, bend back, and then put it back. And first of all, it looks awkward. It's more dangerous and more strain on the arm. And you usually can't get the maximum reach that you could get if you were to twist the arm and then pull it back. And you don't have to pull the elbow out. You can do that close to the body, and it goes up. I'm not very flexible in my shoulders, but if you rotate my arms and pull them up, I go into a high neck position. So, I mean, understanding how to move the body, you can make it, and it's going to look more natural. Not only are you going to be able to push it farther and safer, it's going to look more natural.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think we've been pretty much.
Well, I think we've already bored people to death. by now.
If we have,
Don't know
we
if there's
have
anybody
more.
left here.
One of us is going to annoy somebody with our different accents. So someone's going to be like, okay, done with the American accent. Done with the American accent.
Yeah, well,
If
I
we
got-
have other questions, I think we can take last question. Can we?
yeah, if there's the last one.
If there is the last one. Otherwise,
We'll wrap up and shut up.
It's been fun.
like what? Well, let's hope we continue with this.
Yeah. Next
Yeah,
time
well,
let's next time start a little bit smoother. Now you got the kinks worked out.
yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah. I try and work out why that camera's been cutting
Yeah.
out, because that's a pain in the backside.
Well,
I think I must have double clicked on the mic button or something rather than single clicked, and it just set it back to mute at the beginning. I think that was the problem.
so we should say thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't see any questions popping up, so thank you very much, folks, and it's good night from me.
Good night from me, from Nina Ross.
It's been fun, and I'll see you guys somewhere on the road, I'm sure, shortly. Yeah. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.